Hey, welcome back to Diode Press. I'm Graham. So in this week's video, I'm going to be making a zine. And so if you're not familiar with what a zine is or a fanzine, it's really a low-cost publication that you can make on really any topic you could think of. So typically zines are only a couple dollars. So like these that were sent in from Ed a couple months ago, they're black and white on copy paper. And obviously if you're going to make your zine on color paper with full color images like the ones that I'm going to be making, it's going to cost a little bit more because you have to have the color copies made. But some zines out there are just over the top with screen printing and just great production value. But it's also fun just to make a simple one-page zine that's folded up. So it's really up to you, the quality and how much you want to put into it. So I've only made a couple of zines in the past, so I'm definitely no expert on it. But it's something I've been wanting to do, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how I went ahead and made this one. So if you've been following along on Instagram or on my Patreon, you might have seen the sketches as I've been kind of working through these. But it's basically 6 illustrations of the 6 kind of classical simple machines. So the screw, the lever, the wedge. And then I've added a bunch of text and descriptions and other things to it. So if you're interested in purchasing one of these, I'll have a link down in the description box where you can pick one up. So let me know what you think down in the comment box, and I'd love to see if you guys have made any zines. I'd love to see what you put together. And make sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with new videos, and let's jump right into making the zine. I'm starting off by drawing the 6 illustrations of the simple machines. And I won't take you through drawing each one, I'll just kind of go through one of them. But basically I used this gray toned paper, I did a light sketch in pencil, and then followed up with a pen, and then finally for the pops of red and the shading I used a set of watercolor paints. I have plans for the original illustrations once I'm done with making the zine, so I'm cutting these down to 3" by 3" squares, and you'll see in the next video what I do with these. But for this project, I'm just cutting them into squares and then I'm going to scan them into the computer. So once I was done drawing all the illustrations, I went ahead and scanned them into the computer and then brought them into Photoshop. And so originally my plan was to just do some color tweaking and then make a kind of real simple zine with just the images. But instead I ended up using a lot of text and adding a whole lot to it. So looking back, I really should have gone, instead of using Photoshop, gone into Illustrator and done all the text work and everything in a vector-based program like Illustrator, so you can scale things up and down and not have issues. Because Photoshop's really not designed for doing a lot of text work. But this is also small and I'm not going to be scaling it and I'm not going to be doing a whole lot more with it than this, so I think it's fine. So I started off with just laying out some boxes here, which are 8.5 by 11. So this is one front of the sheet and this is the back of the sheet. So I scanned in all my images, and I also scanned in a couple blank sheets for the pages that, the opposing sheets that didn't have images on. So I added kind of descriptions to what each illustration is kind of representing, so the screw is an inclined plane wrapped around a cylinder or a shaft. And so each machine, the 6 kind of classical machines, has a small description. Now for the cover sheet, I didn't have any illustrations that I, created just for that. So I started off with just blank sheets of the same paper I used for the illustrations. And then here, this is a drawing I did of a different set of drawings I'm using for the back cover. And then for the front cover, I chose another illustration that I have. This one's kind of like a blue pen drawing. And then I added the text on top, and then my name here in the front. And so that's pretty much it for the text and what I added to the sheets. And then next was kind of setting them up to be printed. And so like I said, this is 8.5 by 11 for this whole sheet. And you can see here I used just the guides to kind of lay things out. So once all the sheets were done and laid out how I wanted, I added just a gray background around it. Because even when I cut it out, I don't want to risk having, because I made them exactly 3 inches, which is how big the page is. I didn't want to risk having, a little slice of white showing through. So next was just adding in some crop marks. And I'm sure there's really easy ways to do this, especially like in Illustrator, like I was saying. But how I did it is I use the guides. So say I wanted to put a crop mark right here. I just use the selection tool right here. Go to your edit menu with that selection and choose stroke. And then I just did a 1 pixel wide stroke. And if you get rid of that selection set, that leaves you a 1 pixel wide box that was right up against both of those grids. And then I just deleted out the sections I don't want. And that's how I did all the other crop marks in here. And so now the next thing to do was just to export all 4 of these sheets into a PDF file that I can then take to the printer and get copied. And so here we have our 4 pages. And so when I go to the copy shop, I'll just have them print that front and back. And then when I cut them out, I'll be able to line up right on these crop marks. And that's what we're gonna do in the next step. And this is obviously probably much more complicated than I needed to make it. You can do this all on paper with, gluing down your different things you want in your zine, and you can not do any of this stuff in Photoshop, and you can just use a photocopier. But I kind of really enjoy laying things out and kind of making things more complicated than they really need to be. So I really hope that all made sense, and if not, just let me know in the comments down below. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I just don't want to get too bogged down into Photoshop stuff. So I had the illustrations printed out double-sided, full color, on this kind of thicker paper. And now using the crop marks that I laid out, I'm using the X-Acto blade and just cutting through the paper. So even though in Photoshop I had both sides of the paper lined up perfectly, once they're actually photocopied at the shop, the front and the back are off, probably about the width of the crop marks. But that's just something you're going to have to deal with when you go to a copy shop and have copies made of things. It's just when it flips over, it's not going to be exact. Folding up the book's pretty easy. All I have to do is fold each sheet in half. And I can look at the page numbers that I have on the bottom and figure out which direction I need to fold it, so when it's all done it fits together and the pages line up properly. Once all my pages are folded and fitting together nice, I can go ahead and sew them together. So a lot of zines you'll see people just use a stapler, and that's fine to do, but for mine I want to have a kind of a nicer binding in it. To do that, you can either buy pre-waxed thread made for like book binding, or in this case I got some heavy-duty thread at the craft shop, and then this block of it's wax for coating thread, and basically you just run the thread through it and it coats the thread, makes it so when it's in the paper it doesn't tear through. Once I prepared the length of thread, I went ahead and put on a small needle. And then to mark the holes in the book, I'm making 3 holes since it's a pretty small book. So I'm using this center finding ruler, and I'm putting 1 hole in the center, and then 1 an inch up and 1 an inch down. And I'm just using a steel point to do this. You just want to make sure all your pages are really lined up well when you poke the holes. And you want to make sure that the holes go all the way through all the sheets of paper. And you can use a clip and clip the pages together when you do this. And so some of my holes didn't go all the way through, so I'm just using the needle and just making sure that they're all the way through before I start sewing it. To bind up the zine, it's really simple. You go through the center hole, leaving a couple inches on the inside, and then next you can go either through the top or the bottom hole from the outside. And then next from the inside, you go to the other hole that you haven't gone through yet, the top one in my case. And then from the back, you go through that center hole one more time. And when you do this, you want to make sure you go on the opposite side of the thread on the inside, like I have here, so when you tie the knot's also tying around that center thread. That way the knot just doesn't fall through the hole. And in my other video, the how to make a sketchbook video, which I'll link in the description box, I go through this a little bit more in detail. So I just tie a double knot here, and then I cut off with the X-Acto blade, leaving just a little bit of thread left over. And then finally I come back with a dab of super glue and put it on that knot, just to hold it all together permanently so I don't have to worry about it ever coming apart. Now once the glue's all dry, my final step is just to trim off the edge of the book. Because as each page folds, the outer pages are going to be shorter than the inner pages. And so just using a sharp X-Acto blade and a straight edge here, I just do multiple cuts along this edge. So that way when it's all done, you have a really nice, even edge to your zine. And there you have it, that's all there is to making a zine. And obviously to keep it simple, you can use, like I said, a staple, a couple staples to bind it together. You can use black and white copies, there's a million ways to do it. This is just the way I wanted to make one. And now I can go ahead and make as many as I want. Alright, so down in the description box I'll have a link to all the materials I used to make this, as well as a link if you want to pick up one of these. So I think that's going to be it for this video. Make sure to share and all those good things, and I'll be back soon with a new video. Thanks! Thanks for watching. To keep up with the videos when they're posted, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to help support the creation of these videos, you can check out the Diode Press Patreon page. Thanks!